Good day, everyone. We are the reporters of Chapter 1, Lesson 3, and our topic is Assessment in Teaching Listening. And I am Princess May A. Fuentes, together with Shalame Dinella, Laika Ganyares, and Shane Zaulda. So now, let's start. So when we say assessment in listening, this means checking how your students understand based on what they hear. So the teachers may use different activities to measure students' listening skills and progress. So for example, a teacher plays an audio story and asks questions about it to see if the students understood the message. So now let's go to why do we assess? So we assess students to collect evidence about their knowledge, skills, and abilities. So by doing assessment, it also helped the teachers to know the students' progress and what areas na need pa nila ma-improve. So for example, after listening to a conversation, the teachers give comprehension question. If many students answer it incorrectly, the teachers knows the lessons are needed to be explained again. So now let's go to types of assessment and listening. So first is initial assessment. So when we say initial assessment, it is done before the lesson. So this helps the teachers to know the students' strength and weaknesses. So for example, on the first day of class, the teacher plays a short audio and asks a simple question to check the students' listening level. So next is formative assessment. So when we say formative assessment, it is done during the lesson. So it checks the students' progress and understanding. Example, while listening to a dialogue, students complete a worksheet and the teacher gives feedback. And lastly is summative assessment. So when we say summative assessment, it is done after the lesson. It also measures how much the students have learned. So for example, at the end of the lesson, the students take a listening test where they listen to a recordings and answer the question for a grade. So that's the end of my part. Thank you.
What do we assess in listening? In these slides, that when teacher gives listening activities or tests, you should not only check your students heard the audio, but the listening skills are actually being assessed. First, teachers need to ask themselves important questions. Are we assessing the student's ability to understand the message or the listening comprehension? In simple terms, listening comprehension is not just only hearing sounds, but understanding the message behind them. And are we assessing their ability to identify important details after listening? In short, this assessment checks whether students can listen carefully and accurately, can recall important information from what they hear. For example, if students listen to a short announcement, the meeting will be on Friday at 3 p.m. in room 205. Students should be able to identify when and where. When, Friday 3 p.m. and where, room 205. Second, the slide emphasizes that every listening task must have a clear purpose. Teachers should decide when specific listening skills or they want to assess before giving the activity. And lastly, the slide also highlights the importance of aligning listening assessment with the K-12 English curriculum guide, particularly the listening comprehension or LC competencies. Then ensure that students are tested based on required standards and learning outcomes. So we're here at the next slides of my report. Why do we assess? In education, assessment is an integral part of the teaching learning process. This involves collecting evidence and making judgment or forming opinions about listening, knowledge skills, and abilities. Assessment in listening is as important as assessment in other macro skills. Teachers have to employ mechanisms on how to monitor students' progress and performance at different of the learning process. So why do we assess? Assessment is important part of a teaching and learning. It means collecting information about students, learning and making judgment about what they know, what they can do, and how well they are doing. In simple terms, assessment helps teachers see if learning is happening. Why is it important? Why is it assessment is important in listening? Listening is one of the macro skills in language, just like reading, speaking, and writing. Because of this, it is also need to be assessed. Teachers assessing listening to check if the students understand of what they hear, monitor students' progress over time, see students' strengths and difficulties in listening. So, which part of the listening process students need help with assessment happenings in different stages? First, listening assessment is done at different stages of the listening process, such as what? Before listening, to see what students already know, while listening, to check students in a real time, and after listening, to see how much students understand. So we're here at the last part of my report. Brown 2004 identified the types of listening. Teaching can identify the purpose of the task and then identify specific listening tests to give to students. Purpose of listening. Intensive listening focusing on the form of the language, listening task, and test may focus on listening for the perception of the components or language such as sounds, words, discourse, market, and etc. For example, recognizing the phonological and morphological elements. This form of listening assessment assess students found in the English language. Meanwhile, the paraphrase recognition, the type of assessment focuses on students' ability to paraphrase in short sentence or what they hear.
So good day everyone. Today I'll be discussing the types of listening. Responsive listening. So when we say responsive listening, it is the ability to show understanding by giving an appropriate response after listening to a short conversation or utterance. So open-ended response requires students to answer using their own words and vocabulary, showing comprehension beyond yes or no answers. So appropriate response to a question checks if students correctly understand what was said by responding accurately to the question asked. Selective listening. So when we say selective listening, it focuses on picking out specific important details such as dates, times, places, names, numbers, and facts. So listening tasks require students to scan what they hear to identify needed information like directions, figures, or events. So listening close assesses students' ability to recognize key vocabulary from a short spoken text, while information transfer or chart filling checks how well they listen to details and accurately record them. So lastly is extensive listening. So when we say extensive listening, it focuses on understanding longer spoken text and connecting ideas for overall meaning. So listening tasks develop top-down processing, where students grasp the main idea and flow of the conversation. So dictation checks students' ability to recognize sounds and words accurately, while dialogue with multiple choice questions assesses how well they understand and apply information from what they heard.
So, good day everyone. Now we were going to talk about how we assess students, especially in listening. So, no matter what skills we are testing, there are some important principles we should follow. And there are some certain principles serve as guidelines when assessing teaching listening. So, first is what we called reliability. So a reliable test is consistent and dependable, meaning the listening test gives the same or very similar results every time it is used in the same conditions. For example, if a student listens to the same audio on 2 different days and get very different scores, the test may be not reliable. Again, a reliable listening test gives similar results when repeated under the same condition. So next principle is what we call validity. So validity means the test is measuring what is supposed to measure. So it is important because a test may be reliable but still not valid. So if a test measures the wrong skills, the results are meaningless. For example, if a listening test uses very difficult vocabulary or long written questions, students may fail because of poor reading skills, not poor listening. And this means the test is not valid for listening. Again, validity means the test is measuring what it is supposed to measure. So another important principle is what we call practicality. And this means the test should be easy to use in real classrooms. So teachers need to think about the limits, the number of students, and ease of scoring. Since teachers have limited time and there are a lot of students, so the test must be realistic and manageable. For example, a teacher wants to give a listening test that needs special headphones for each student, but the school does not have enough equipment. So even if the test is good, it is not practical because it takes too much time or effort. That's why assessment activities should fit within the class time. Again, practicality means the test should be easy to use in real classroom. So the last principle is what we call authenticity. So authenticity means the test is close to real life. So listening tasks should reflect real situations such as conversations, announcements, or instructions to help students prepare for real-world communication. Kasi nga, di ba, students learn better when tasks feel real and useful for daily life. So language teachers, particularly in teaching listening, should consider the level and the assessment methods appropriate for the students. So through feedbacking information is given to students about their listening performance and how they can improve. So without feedback, students do not know what they did right or wrong. So according to Grant Wiggins 1998, he suggested that students need to understand 3 things about their performance. So what they are doing well, what they are struggling with, and what they need to do differently to improve. So this helps students to improve their listening skills. So to conclude, good assessment should be reliable, valid, practical, authentic, and supported by clear feedback. And these principles help make assessment fair, useful, and meaningful for students. So that's all for our report. Thank you so much everyone for listening.